Okay, hello again, this is Mr. Steele, and currently I'm really frustrated because I just did this one, and the lovely video program which has done so much good for me didn't record anything. So I'm a little frustrated right now. In fact, as you can see, I didn't even cut off the problem that we're going to be doing. So, giving this a second try, because that's how much I want you to do well in the standard quiz, we're going to be going through Term 3, Standard Quiz question number 10 at Franklin High School, the problem asking you to factor by grouping. Now I'm going to demonstrate for you two different methods to factor by grouping, and although I realize it's difficult because this is the last question on the standard quiz and your Friday brain is just screaming, please let me go, it's really important that you do this one, and this is one that I feel like you can really approach. Like there's really one strategy, one of two that will really work for you, and there was a time back in the beginning of term 1 that you really did these well. So that's where I'm going to start, is I'm going to demonstrate factor by grouping. So what I'm going to start with is a problem. So thankfully I have it written here. So let me just copy it down. And again, I'm doing this all off the top of my head on my own time. And the computer program just doesn't appreciate me. So here we go. So we want to factor this by grouping, which if you recall, factoring just means we want our answer to look like this. Oh, that was bad. We want it to look like that. Stuff times stuff. So that's our goal, is we want to make it look that way. Break it up. Okay, so what are we going to do? Well, there's two methods. So the first method I'm going to show you is titled splitting the middle. It's very possible that there's actually another way to do it, or another name for it, but I can't think of it, so I'm going to call it split the middle. Is everyone okay with that? Okay. So this is split in the middle. Basically, what we're going to do in splitting the middle is we're going to put parentheses into the problem and kind of split it into two chunks. In particular, using my little pen here, I'm going to split it into 6x cubed plus 8x squared, and then plus 15x plus 20. Now I know that looks like they're being multiplied at this point, but they're not. It's just a way to split this up and look at each piece. Because then, once we've added parentheses, we're just going to Gcf factor. And I'll actually show you the Gcf factoring step this time. So it's not too bad. This was the first factoring strategy we used, and everyone's always comfortable with this the first day, or pretty close to it. So here we go. So what does Gcf factoring look like? Well, basically we've got to factor this piece, find what the GCF is, and then do the same thing with this one, and then we'll end up with GCF times the rest. So in this case, to start off, since it's the first time you've probably GCF factored in a little while, unless you're one of those cool people that goes home on weekends and goes, oh man, got to GCF factor a little bit tonight. You probably haven't done this, so I'm going to make a table for each one. I'll do them both together in the same area, same time. You're smart. Okay, there we go. So there's my table. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to prime factor each of these expressions as much as possible, and then look for what they have in common. So 6 is 2 times 3, and x cubed is x times x times x, and 8x squared is 4 times 2, or 2 times 2 times 2 times x times x. Okay, 15x, 15 is 3 times 5, and then there's an x. Then 20 is 4 times 5, or 2 times 2 times 5. Okay, so now we've got to actually pull out my GCF. So it's going to be whatever's in common between the top and bottom lines. So I see a 2, I see an x, oh, and there's another x. So that tells me for the left side, my GCF is going to be 2x squared. Okay, now in order to figure out what the rest is, we just take the rest, or the leftover pieces from the table. So in this case, I see 3x, and 2 times 2 is 4, and then since this is all positive signs here, it'll be plus 4. Okay, so on the second one, my GCF, looking at it, the only thing in common is a 5. So my GCF is going to be 5, in fact a positive 5, and then the rest is going to be 3 times x, or 3x, and then everything's positive, 2 times 2 is 4. And there we go. We've GCF factored each of those chunks. This one goes with 6x cubed plus 8x squared. This one goes with 15x plus 20. Alrighty, so once we're here, we're actually only like a step away from finishing this problem. So first off, in our answer, we wanted it to look like parentheses, So it'll be parentheses times parentheses. And now one of those probably is clear from looking at this picture. Like if we look at our line from our factoring, we see 3x plus 4 in there twice. And that is definitely going to be one of our factors. No ifs, ands, or buts. Now for the second one, it might not be as clear because that factor has its two pieces in two spots. So one of them is right here, the 2x squared, and one of them is the plus 5. So our second factor is going to include those two GCFs. That'll be 2x squared plus 5. I'm disappointed because that's in purple and I don't think you can actually see that on the camera. Either way, we have now factored by grouping using the split the middle strategy, and there is our final answer of 3x plus 4 times 2x squared plus 5. And of course you could check this if you wanted to, or if you didn't trust yourself, but I feel pretty comfortable with that, especially because I just did it 5 minutes ago and the computer didn't record. Alrighty, so with the problem magically written up there now, what we're going to show you is I'm going to show you the same problem except done with a different strategy. So this strategy is called a couple different names. It refers to the area model that we talked about for standard quiz question number 7, I believe it was. One is called the backwards box, or I referred to it as ZOB, or if you actually try to say box backwards, which I assure you that was. So, in using the backwards box, we're going to be also using GCFs, but instead of multiplying into the box like on standard question number 7, we're actually going to be GCFing out of the box. So, GCF out of the box. So, we're going to start with the same strategy. We're going to start with that same box. So, to do that, I'm going to try to very subtly cover up this parenthesis that I inadvertently wrote earlier. So, I'm not going to be able to do it. So, I already gave up. So what I'm going to start with is the same old box, the good old area model box that has 4 spots. Alrighty, so, if you actually look at it, it kind of looks like a guy's mouth and a nose. Well, let's just ignore my tangents here. Okay, so what we're going to start with is instead of putting this stuff on the outside of the box, we're going to fill in the box. So, to fill it in, I'm going to take one term from each one. So 6x cubed plus 8x squared. Notice I'm bringing the sign with it. Plus 15x plus 20. And so I've filled in the box, and now just as the problem says up here, I'm going to GCF out of the box. So what we're doing is really going to be the same thing as over here with those GCFs, except since you've already seen it once, I'm going to do that part of my head. I'll kind of explain it, but I'm going to do it mostly in my head. So, starting, let's go this way first. So 6x cubed and 8x squared. The GCF of 6 and 8 is going to be 2. And then x cubed, x squared. You can imagine that if we had one of those little tables, there'd be 3 x's, 2 x's. They'd both have 2 x's or x squared in common. Okay, down here, plus 15 and plus 20. We're going to pull out a 3 times 5, 4 times 5. We're going to pull out a 5. And then there's no x's on both of them, so just a plus 5. And again, I take that plus 5 because it's a plus sign nearest, and we always take the nearest sign. Okay, and now moving up to the top, we're going to factor going up. So GCF here, 6x cubed and 15x. Well, I see an x for sure, and then GCF of 6 and 15 is 3. Over here, nearest sign is a plus, so I'll put that plus sign there. Just ignore the parenthesis, it's not even there. And then for numbers, my GCF of 8 and 20 is going to be 4, and there's no x's, and so there we go. We've now pulled out a GCF from the box. Now in order to write our final answer, which of course has to look like stuff times stuff, we need to just take those things that we pulled out, all those GCFs. So for example, I'm going to pull out 3x plus 4. It's right there. Taking it right off the outside of the box. And then lastly, the one for the left side, 2x squared plus 5. And so there we go. We get our final answer. It's now factored using the ZOB method, or the backwards box. And, look at that. Turns out to be the same answer, except this one's more colorful. And there we go. We've now used the box method, or the backwards box method, or the ZOB method, to factor by grouping as well.